Hey everyone, you're listening to Athletes Beyond the Mind, a sports psychology and mental training podcast. Athletes Beyond the Mind is brought to you by Close the Gate Hoops and Close the Gate Hoops Mindset. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome back to Athletes Beyond the Mind. This week we're talking all about talking, so we're getting really meta this week. We're going to be diving into verbal communication as well as nonverbal communication and the importance of strengthening both of those on and off the court and strengthening with your teammates as well as your coaches. So the first step is verbal communication. So with verbal communication, it's pretty obvious what that is. It's the words you're saying. It's how you're speaking to others. It's what you say, also what you don't say, but just the verbal part of it. This is what you can use to really get to know your teammates. You can ask them questions, you can share information about you, and it's not always about being the loudest person, but about using your voice to stand up for each other, to get to know each other, and to create those bonds that create success on and off the court. Because as you get to know your teammates better, you all start to really connect, and that shows on the court. That's when you see those teams that it seems like they have one mind because they work so well together. That's because they communicate with each other. They share things about each other. They learn who they are outside of the sport as well. And that's what it's all about. In the two blogs we have about verbal and nonverbal communication, there are two activities in there that are explained about what you can do to kind of increase this knowledge. But I'm not going to get into those there because there's already videos on it. But I just wanted to point that out because it really is important about getting to know each other. Your teammates, you spend a lot of time together. You have practices, you have workouts, you have team dinners, team get-togethers, the bus rides, all of that. It's a lot of time you spend with each other. And if you're friends outside of it, that's even more time. So why not get to know each other and get to know, oh, that person just said this, but something seems a little off. Let's check in with them. Or they said that and that's kind of their go-to saying when they're struggling. Or they said something and they seem really excited. Let's talk to them about that. As well as it leads to that communication on the field. You don't have to say so many words to get their attention or to get them to know the play. You start developing this shorthand, which is also really important. And your verbal communication is how you can ask questions to get to know more about them, to get to understand the coaches. When you don't know a play, you can ask questions about it. It's all about that verbal communication of sharing and learning. It's not just a one-way street, it's a two-way street, and it's about connecting with your teammates, because when you all, when you can just say anything to your teammates and know they're actually listening, that's pretty amazing. So then the other half of it is that nonverbal communication. And when I say other half, I don't mean verbal and nonverbal are 50-50. It's not 50% verbal, 50% nonverbal. I just mean in the type of communication. Nonverbal plays an even bigger role than you realize, because it's your body language, it's your tone, your attitude, it's the signals you can give each other to know what's going on in this quick little instant. Holding up one for play one, that's your team knows it, or the fist or whatever it is. Yes, there's that nonverbal communication to know the plays. But it's also you notice the body language of your teammate they're just very slouched, they're very back, kind of staying away from everyone else. Now that you've built that relationship with the verbal communication, you can reach out, something's wrong, you can check in with them, or you can tell coach that something's going on with them and you're worried. You can have that look to each other and just know what the other one's thinking, where you get that cool play going. Or you can tell they're really excited and they want to talk about something. Give them that space to say it. And also, you can start reading and knowing when, they need a break. Let's give them a break. They need to talk, they need to do whatever it is. You start recognizing that and learning about each other off the court, you're going to see such amazing results on the court, because there's that respect, the trust, and this openness. Because nonverbal communication, it's all about being able to read each other. And I know some people aren't great at reading that nonverbal communication, but it's about practicing. And as you get to know your teammates better, you are able to practice that more. And that's when you start working on understanding that nonverbal communication. The eye rolls, you can start noticing that change, or that little shift in their tone, or you notice their body language is different that day. That's what it's all about, is learning your teammates, using verbal and nonverbal communication on and off the court, building those bonds, strengthening them. And then, like I said, it's like you're one mind on the court, or whatever sport you play, the field, anything like that. You start becoming that one mind, and that's when teams don't stand a chance against you. Even if they have more talented players, when you build that bond and you're able to communicate with each other verbally and nonverbally, no one stands a chance against you, because you're now a team. You're not just these individual players that happen to spend a lot of time together playing the same sport. You're a team that knows each other and respects each other and is able to have those conversations verbally and non-verbally when needed. And it's so amazing. And that communication also needs to extend to the coaches. If you can't trust your coach, or if you can't open up to them, there's going to be so much you hold in, and that's when you start not being able to focus. That's when the lines start to blur between your identities. That's when you're not able to control the controllables, things like that. Your coach is such an important part, and I know not everyone gets along with their coaches or agrees perfectly with their philosophy, but it's about that respect, and they need to learn it as well, of like what you all need, because every team is different. So just thinking like high school or college, like, yes, you're playing for 4 years, but every year that team slightly changes, with some new players coming in, some old players leaving, things like that, injuries, etc. So you need to be able to verbally and non-verbally communicate with these new people, get to know them, get to respect them, and that's when they start meshing better with the team. Verbal and non-verbal communication, you need them both. If you don't have one, you're not going to be successful. So do some of those activities mentioned in the blog. Learn more about each other and practice. If you're someone who's not great at verbal communication, strengthen your nonverbal. But also work on sharing what you need to share. I'm not saying you have to talk all the time or be the loudest, but learn to say what you need to say when you need to say it. Don't be afraid to talk to your teammates when you're struggling, because if you're afraid to talk to them, you're going to be afraid to make mistakes in front of them, and then you're not going to be trying very hard in your practices or games, because you don't want to make a mistake and you don't want to be that person. So work on that communication. Work on those connections between your teammates. If you're the captain, do some activities every day, just something little, just to get to know each other. Don't pressure anyone to have to do it, but just start, talking to each other, paying attention to each other. Like, maybe someone has a routine. Make sure you don't interrupt that. Like, recognize when something changes, or that they need that time. And yeah, so it's just about paying attention to what they're saying, how they're saying it, and does their body language match what they're saying? Are they saying they're okay and they don't need help, but they're kind of withdrawn and they just look sad? Things like that. And once you are able to combine the verbal and nonverbal, you're going to be unstoppable. Your team's going to be unstoppable. So work on it with your family as well, like kind of shifting gears. Work on it with your family and your friends, your coworkers, when you're interviewing for jobs. This is success I talked about, like with winning and having that one mind. If you're also able to improve your verbal communication with those around you, so that you can tell them about your wants and needs in a direct way, and not being afraid to open up those around you, or that you start recognizing when your friends aren't doing well, or when they're doing really well, or your family. Or you can start reading in an interview. You can be like, okay, this is not going well, or I said this and they perked up, so let me go more with that. Things like that. Verbal and nonverbal communication, it's something you do every single day in all aspects of your life. So this is a skill that, yes, can improve your success into winning your competition, but also it can just improve your life in general. If you're able to share what you need to share and listen when others need to listen, you're set for life, because you have verbal and nonverbal communication down. And the last thing I want to talk about before ending this episode is the other aspect of communication, which is listening. You don't always have to be talking. It's okay to just sit and listen for a bit, to look at that person across from you and be like, there's something going on with them. Let me listen. Let me give them 2 minutes of my time because I can tell their nonverbal communication. There's something going on there. Things like that, like, and listen to listen. Don't listen to hear. Hearing is when it's just going in one, out the other. But if you're actually listening and processing what they're saying, that's when the rest of it happens. So yeah, the top 3 things with communication is that verbal communication, that nonverbal communication, and then the third thing I threw in of that listening and respecting each other by listening and learning from each other. So that's all I have on communication this week. Like I said, please check out the blogs of nonverbal and verbal communication where you can see 2 examples of activities to improve your teammates' communication, both verbal and nonverbal, as well as get to know each other a bit more. See you next week. Thank you all for listening to Athletes Beyond the Mind, a mental skills and sports psychology podcast. Please follow us on all social media at CTG Mindset.